given a strange and to us perhaps unusual title to these evenings, having to do with the future. So whenever there is something concerning the future, then I like to bring up the title that the late Hollywood prophet Criswell, who maybe some people still remember, he was quite an interesting character, and he had a nationally syndicated television program on his predictions for the future. And they hardly ever, not even one of them, was verified subsequently, but he went on with them, and he was a very dramatic gentleman with a sort of albino white hair and big eyes, you know. And tomorrow and tomorrow, here today and gone tomorrow. So we are all interested in the future because that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And then came the big music, you know, Criswell predicts, you know, quite a man. In any event, he was one of our mascots here in town, so it is worth remembering, but we are all interested in the future. It occurred to me while reflecting on the possible content of this evening's talk that it is not really all that useful to talk about the future unless one also considers at the same time the past that leads up to the present future, because there is a continuity between the past and the future, and the future may make more sense and fit more into the scheme of things if it is considered, at least to some extent, in the light of the past. So I will try to refer a little bit to the past history of humanity and see whether from that we may go in some meaningful manner toward the future. So what we really have is a species, which is ourselves, that appeared at some nondescript period in the past, in some uncharted or uncatalogued place, and from there spread out over the face of the world. Probably the most likely original habitat of humanity, according to the physical anthropologists, was somewhere in Africa. In fact, I think it was the great philosophical anthropologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who was one of the people who made that particular discovery. And it was his theory that there was a single location somewhere on the face of the earth, and then from there gradually the migration of humanity took place, and that from there it went all over the world. And strange as that may seem, stranger things than that have occurred in history, so it is actually in many ways quite likely. It of course throws maybe some shibboleths, which is a Hebrew word for for a word to conjure with, you know. So among the shibboleths, this sort of shoots down one, and that is the notion of native peoples. It would seem that when the total picture becomes available, that there are no such animals, because everybody came from somewhere. Nobody grew like a tree in one particular spot. We call him, this is a native person. And so, let's say the principle of nomadism, of moving from one place to the other, is a very, very important factor in the history of humanity when looking at the past. So the likelihood is that there is only a difference in the timeline when certain people arrived where they were found maybe more recently, but that everybody moved, and maybe it has a little bit to do with the proverb of the Greeks, pantari, which means everything moves. A philosophical statement. So when we consider this, then it perhaps places a number of issues that people are interested in, and that they argue about into a different perspective. So let us say then that primitive humanity, which is what we are talking about, is mobile, and that undoubtedly due to genetic inheritance and other factors, it is a significant characteristic of humanity that we are mobile. We like to move around. We like to come and go. We like to go here and we like to go there. And in so doing, we contribute to the enhancement of our consciousness. Because as particularly modern analytical psychology holds, we have several, our psyche, which is just a Greek word for soul, our psyche has several functions. And the most elementary and the most ubiquitous of those functions is the sensate function. And it's the sensate function that directs consciousness to outward circumstances, to outward sights, to outward experiences. And so that being the case, it is quite important that we pay attention to that characteristic of the human, that the human is mobile, the human is interested in the external world, and it derives stimuli for his or her consciousness from these particular stimuli. And therefore, this is the most intense set of stimuli, of circumstances that we encounter as we move from one place on the earth to another, is that it feeds, it gives an input to our consciousness. So that being the case, we need to keep that in mind, and also recognize that it may be, if indeed these anthropological theories are true, we are more closely related to each other than we think, and that we are really, whether that is pleasing to us or not, we are really a sort of extremely extended, ancient human family, at least a human family that has very ancient roots. And that being the case, maybe some of the notions of our needed relationship and interaction with each other, and concepts such as the one that was included in the emblem, in the coat of arms of the Theosophical Society, have some considerable importance, namely that there is a universal relationship, as in the 19th century terms, a universal brotherhood, to which you can add sisterhood. And when that came in, then I certainly suggested, how about cousinhood, niecehood, nephewhood, and all of that. But whichever way you want to put it, that we are related to each other. We are even in our biological heritage, we are not separate from each other. And so we always have a choice. Are we going to concentrate on our separateness, or are we going to concentrate on our relatedness? And probably the best way to go about it is to relate ourselves inwardly and emotionally to both. That yes, we are apparently, in terms of our deepest nature and of our remotest origins, we are quite unique as individuals, and that uniqueness is a precious thing, and it is a precious ground within which experience can grow and produce its fruit. But on the other hand, we are also related to each other, and therefore we should recognize that relationship, and when the occasion arises, we should act upon it in the sense that we need each other. And that is also a very important point, because we all have been at times in our lives when we were alone, when we didn't have much company, when we were not relating to each other, to other people in a meaningful way, and there's something inside of us that didn't like that. And so these are all issues that when we contemplate the possible origins of the human race come into play. At the same time, as some of you who have been here at our earlier discussions, of course, will remember that there is a portion, and a very important portion, within ourselves that does appear to have been brought here or had come here even from strange and mysterious realms that cannot be found on the face of the earth. So we may be travelers in other dimensions, and I'm not talking about riders on the flying saucers or any of these sorts of things. In fact, the only time that I ideally would have liked to have seen some flying saucers, and the only time I saw some flying saucers was when I lived through the first serious earthquake here, and all the cupboards in my kitchen all opened, and saucers as well as cups came flying out like nobody's business, and so there were really flying saucers and flying cups. To that I can testify. Beyond that, I don't really know. But in any event, let's say it is fairly evident on the basis of the testimony of the more unique and more profound disclosures of wise people of the human race, that what constitutes our essential consciousness, Madame Blavatsky just simply called it your essence, which is a good one, because that is the center, that is the concentrated element, which is the most important in anything. So this essence, this mysterious indwelling seed and kernel, these are all being, of course, metaphors of psychic nature in us, has not had its beginning here. Even I am not about to quote poetry to you, which you all probably already know, but the famous poem about the little child by Wordsworth, which concludes that from another being, from God do we come, who is our home. And this is why it is somewhat personified by the poet. I think it's a very important statement, because there is very little likelihood that we, even though the evolutionists of the 19th century seem to convince us that we kind of developed out of a blue butterfly or a mollusk of some kind, or a bug of another kind by evolution, but rather that we have come from a state of consciousness, because that's the only one that we can measure to some extent and relate to, which is more profound and superior, more powerful, and having a greater possibility of the future than anything that we have now. In other words, that if you want me to play with words a little bit, we are not a product of evolution. If anything, we are a product of a devolution or involution, because a movement that has brought us from a more active, a more transcendental, more insightful condition, primarily of consciousness, and some of that in our coming here sort of seems to have been lost, and that maybe at least a certain amount, certain amount of our seeking, our striving for more consciousness, for more insight, for more intense feelings, for closer and more, once again, more powerful relationships with each other is a matter of far memory. In fact, I think there were one or two authors, primarily of historical novels, that used that term far memory. And I don't mean thereby just the whole controversy about reincarnation, which will probably never be solved. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not worth bothering with, because let's say, if there are more multiple embodiments of our consciousness, well, then eventually we will become aware of them and probably deal with them in some creative fashion. And if there isn't, then we can attend to the present. So the important thing is not how often we come to this world, but that when we come to this world, what are we doing with it? And I think that's a serious question that I have asked myself many times, and often the answer that I gave myself was not particularly flattering. You know, oh my Stephan, you know, why don't you do something more with yourself than you are doing? And I couldn't answer it. But fortunately, hardly ever did other people approach me with that embarrassing question. So that was a little bit better. But in any event, let's say there are significant items of proof indicating that we originate in a reality that is other than physical, and that ultimately is also other than emotional and mental, and perhaps past even the intuitive function, and that our coming and then becoming active at the physical level is really involves as I mentioned, a devolution, that it somewhere deeply within us, and I have felt this, and I don't mind confessing such feelings. I have felt this since I was a little child, and that is somehow that by coming here, most people will tell you that we gain a great deal. We are here in this wonderful world, and look at it all, look at all the trees, listen to all the birds, listen to the coyotes on Beechwood Drive, you know, which incidentally, this is the time when they are quite vocal. So when the sun goes down, you figure out when the sun goes down, then listen, and you'll hear them. And I'm always reminded of the immortal words of my relative Count Dracula of Transylvania: listen to the children of the night. What beautiful music they make. And they do. We have our own children of the night here. So let us say there is a powerful, although albeit subjective, proof of our origins outside of this reality, and as the result of those origins also an enduring ability to relate to a reality other than the one that we perceive with our senses. So the very word relative is a good one, because the issue is really to the effect that we relate, we continue to relate to certain realities which maybe are no longer available to us, but in a secret place within us, we still relate to that reality. We have not lost our connection. We are who we are in part because of that connection. And as such, then we are human. So the human is obviously a strange creature, but it has within it the mark, the remnant, the seed of something more than human. And if on the one hand we may have the kind of insight that Friedrich Nietzsche had when he said that Menschliches, allzu Menschliches, we can be human and too human. Well, that may have been a matter of personal insight on Nietzsche's part, because he was a very, very brilliant man and a great scholar, but he was also, well, let's say, somewhat unstable in the Kopf, as we call it in German. So in any event, now that being the case, then we need to keep in mind what happens to the human being thereafter. And there are, depending on the climates, various parts of the world that certain groups of humans came and found themselves to, and on other circumstances, then there arise differences. And these differences then manifest in the existence of tribes, of families, ultimately of nations. And that then characterizes the ongoing history of the human race. And yet, within all of these groupings and divisions, no matter how many families there may be, no matter how many tribes there may be, no matter how many nations, small or great, there may be, if we manage to penetrate to the deepest availability in the human, we reach a strange common ground. And this common ground is, what is it? It is that which ultimately makes us human. It is the original seed of the human. It is where we come from, and where too, perhaps, with the grace of the divine, we shall be going. And so we humans are an ongoing living paradox. We are in whom, as Goethe expressed it, two souls are struggling in myself, in my body, that we have a terrestrial soul, we have a terrestrial being, but we also have a transcendental being. And the latter is perhaps more easily neglected. Why? Because by virtue of the fact that it is transcendental, what does that mean? What does our transcendental nature transcend? It transcends the world within which we live. it transcends our physicality. It transcends this curious animal that we call our body. As William Butler Yeats in one of his poems states that I am a god shackled to a dying animal. This dying animal being the body. But you know, you should not take that as a put down and as an insult to your body, or for that matter to mine, because it is an important issue. Look how people like animals. This street where I have lived since 1975, I have been living on this street. That just shows you that even though I extol the mobility of the human race, I really didn't live up to it all that much. Well, I lived up to it in terms of traveling. I went to Australia, I went to New Zealand, I went to Europe, I went to Iceland, where very few people go, and so forth, but I always came back here. Now, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I don't know why you should be interested in it if you are, but I just thought it was a good idea to mention it just the same. However, let's say, so we have a part of ourselves that is really in the nature of freedom, that desires external circumstances of freedom because it senses an interior freedom. Deeply within us, deeply whatever metaphor you want to use, our heart, our soul, we are free. But the difficulty is that we are seldom in touch with that part of ourselves. We are riding the dying animal, which is the body, and we forget about something strange, a curious kind of force, a curious kind of energy, which is there in the eyes of the little baby when it is born, and which is still there when it concerns somebody, shall we say my age, which I would rather not disclose at this moment. So, by which I mean, when you're very young and we are very old, it is always there, and it is a mystery. It is something amazing, and in fact, it is something that in many cultures was associated with divinity. The deeply seated internal, this deeply seated internal transcendental power within the human has been regarded as a god or a goddess. And why that was so? Because it takes on, because of its relationship with the physical body, with the emotions, with the intuition, with thinking and so forth, it takes on the characteristic of these various faculties or functions, and as such it partakes of all of them, so that we end up being a strange, multifaceted being. And oh my goodness, well, you know, nowadays the photographers we shall always have with you. Go ahead, dear. That's all right. That's all right. So now, all right, that being the case, we have sort of, in a very sketchy fashion, and maybe in a very inadequate fashion, we have really looked at the past of the human being. The human being what really makes it human, the transcendental consciousness that it possesses, came from a different reality at various times, and has assumed various expressions. I think Madame Blavatsky referred to them as vestures and bodies, and she talked about the 7 vestures which the particular school of Mahayana Buddhism that she studied with believed in, and therefore we end up like, if we want to have a very nice description, a very flattering one, then we are somewhat like a psycho-spiritual jewel with many facets. Now, that's usually, I don't use that metaphor very often, but usually I have a favorable response, especially from the ladies. They don't mind being jewels, and for that reason they don't mind wearing jewels either. But in fact, I'm not the first one to make that curious analogy, because vaguely on the back of my geriatric memory is a poem, a prayer in a poem form by Eliphas Levi, the great Kabbalist, where he also refers, and he speaks to the divine and says, "Thou who wearest on thy fingers in a plethora of beautiful stones the shining light of the stars," so that the hand of God wears the light of the stars, and when it comes to us, then they become jewels. So that it's not a bad metaphor. Now, once again, that being the case, then the question arises: all right, we have a far memory. We have a mysterious connection with something that was, but not in the same manner as our memories of events that we have gone through in this world, but that we have a connection with a living memory, with something that we know because we have been there, because we have experienced it, and because it is still with us and in us. Now, all right, that being the case, where is the future that the Hollywood prophet was talking about? Why am I not talking about the future? Well, I haven't been talking about it explicitly for the reason, because when we look into the deeper side of ourselves and of each other, when we touch that ineffable center of transcendence within us, then it points to something very, very important. It points to the fact that what has been will be, that we have not lost anything that cannot be recovered, and that our task, or at least our principal task in this world, is the recovery of certain internal treasures that once were very close to us and very active to us, and that can be again. So that what we are really in the process of doing here is recovering step by step our original calling, our original nature. All ambition is ultimately an ambition to find transcendence, to find the divine. When you peel the various layers off, what you eventually end up with is the transcendental center, and then you say, oh yes, that is what I have been looking for. Now I am here. And I might even suggest, even that seems to be such an infrequent condition of the human, that we might even be, perhaps for the first time, maybe for the second or the third time, we might even be happy, even though we are in this world. Because, as many, particularly poets, mystics have pointed out, there is a happiness, there is a beatitude. Beatus in Latin means joyous, means happy. That is why I always wondered about the name that the Hungarians, my people, where I was born and raised, gave to the Virgin Mary, because they call her Boldogasszony, which has a double meaning. But the one that always intrigued me is that it says, the happy woman. If there is anybody happy in this reality, it is the one who gave birth to a most important saving figure of the world and of the culture. But at the same time, it is also the translation of the Latin beatus, meaning blessed. Because when we are happy, that is a sign of blessedness. The blessing has come to us that therefore makes us happy. Now, that being the case, we can sort of slide now, hopefully cleverly, to the from the possible recounting of the past to where we came from. Spiritually, we came from a realm of transcendence. Physically, we came from the presence of biological organism, and then we may ask ourselves, where are we going? What is the future? That famous future that Criswell was speaking about. As I indicated, it is really a truism that we have to have a contact, a Gnostic contact of Gnosis with the past, in order to discern anything accurate about the future. Because the past is some representative of what one of the great Rheinland mystics called the divine ground. We grew from the divine ground. That is our background. That is where our roots are, still are. And that is important. And that is one of the main reasons why it is important to have a contact in mind, in thought, and in various other faculties, to have a... Do you have a chair, Dr. Good. So we have the capacity of a touch with the past, and that contact, like a fiery and luminous thread, continues to join us to another and a greater reality. And it's because of that absolutely real condition. I don't like to use the word fact for spiritual things. I know that Rudolf Steiner, who was a very great man, a great thinker, has even constructed a word spiritual science and spiritual fact, eine geistige Tatsache, you see. But I am not a follower in those things of Dr. Steiner, although I have a great respect for him. But let us say it's really something else that we are dealing with. We are dealing with a mysterious connection that we have never lost. And it's upon that mysterious connection that the nature of our future depends. Is our nature going to be drab, uninteresting, without sufficient stimuli, not having enough energetic feelings in it, not being able to relate at the level of feeling to our fellow humans on the one hand, or is it going to be a kind of spiritual fire? Don't forget, symbols are extremely important. Symbols are keys to mysteries. Symbols don't stand for something else. Symbols stand for themselves and for what is beyond them and to which they open up. And you have the symbolism, for instance, of Pentecost, when the teacher, Jesus Christ, the teacher is gone, and the disciples, apostles are all together, and they are presided over by the Blessed Virgin in many of the artworks on the subject. And each one has what looks like and is described as a fiery tongue about their heads. And in turn, probably by relationship, they also have the gift of tongues, and they are able to speak to people in languages that previously they did not know and that are helpful for communication. So this in itself is a very important symbol that I probably didn't deal with much in other ways before, but it is the symbol that when that fire, the Atman, as the Hindus would call it, the Buddha nature, when that fiery something inside begins to move and begins to become active, then it illuminates the mind, it illuminates our thinking, and as such it allows us also to communicate with others, because others have that same capacity. So, all right, now I made a full circle, and I came around again to the old theosophical statement of universal brotherhood. Why are we universal brothers and sisters? Why are we relatives to each other? What is the explanation for that? Why is that there? Because in each and every one of us dwells a fiery mystery. Fiery mystery. It burns, but it also casts a light. I grew up as a child, and again I'm telling you things that you probably don't give a hoot about, but let's say, I grew up as a child in the countryside in northern Hungary, where out in the country we had no electricity. I guess I was true a lot of people in the farmlands and the places in the United States also, but we didn't. And so I was always exposed to flames. Flames in the candles. I had a candle next to my bed, with the light. Flames in kerosene lamps, which shed a little bit more light, but somehow the flame and the light were always together. Maybe just only in my mind, but I think that there is an important symbolism there, because it is the fiery aspect of transcendence that sheds the light. And so when we touch the great fire, when we are with someone who, like the Gnostic gospel says, he who is near to me is near to the fire. It doesn't use another element. It doesn't say the water. It doesn't even say the wine, but it is a fire. And this fire, which is present in all of us, and which needs to be attended to, just like a fireplace, which we have just installed. It's a joy of my life. We just installed a beautiful gas fuel fireplace in the office. So when we get up, if you want to look in that door, you see it. It's the most wonderful thing that I have seen in a long time. Well, what can you do? I like fireplaces. But let us say, there is a relationship between the fire and the light of a symbolic nature. And when we look for the light, we come to the fire. And the fire is not a fire that will burn you, but a fire that will continue to contribute to your enlightenment, to the raising of the warmth of your soul and of your heart, and the gradual, ongoing restoration of your transcendental nature. And that is why you have the symbol of Pentecost, and these symbols, these symbolic events, whether they come from sacred scripture of one religion or the other or not, but these symbolic expressions have very often very profound meanings. They open doors. And one that this one does, that if you want light, you should be near the fire. Being near the fire is being near the divine nature in other people and in reality itself. The closer you come to that interior mystery, where the flame is there, the more you will see the light, and the light will make you understand. The light will make you know. The light will bring you Gnosis. And so now, how does that relate to the future of our Hollywood prophet? Well, probably only to the extent that how should I phrase this? I'm trying to be real bombastic about it, and that's so much contrary to my nature. So, but I think that something of to the effect needs to be said, that we need to stoke the fire within, and if it goes into a full blaze, if it sheds the light, then our way is good and our way is clear. and that therefore that is the discovery of that flame and of that light, and its incorporation, its utilization within ourselves and in our lives. If there is any meaning of our lives, that's the meaning. And by the way, Carl Jung very wisely said that you shouldn't ask what is the meaning of life. That's too abstract. If you want to ask something, ask what is the meaning of my life. Make it a little more personal, and that's true. But it is the meaning of the life of each and every one of us. It's the discovery of the secret, the treasure of the secret, the grail that was hidden in us when we came here, and that is still in need of discovery. And yet we are assured by all the great knowers, all the great Gnostics, the great teachers in the world, that it is not only possible, but that it is necessary, it is imperative. Because without that transcendental flame growing in us and taking over the governance of our lives, we are not really alive. That is what we came here to do. We didn't come here to become rich. We didn't come here even to be happy, although certain forms of happiness certainly encounter the spiritual life. But we came here to discover a mystery, and we may discover, and many have discovered that mystery inside of us. So what is if you look at and if I look at the condition of the world and the condition of this country, let's say I can be quite honest about it. What we see is not anything terribly promising. And if we say to ourselves, oh my gosh, if this potential of conflict, of antagonism, of fierce fighting with each other, if this is what we are here for, then heaven help us. And having lived a longer life than many people, and in several continents, I can tell you that if we do not discover what we have come here to discover, if we don't see the Holy Grail when it is in front of us, and then see how it is related to the Holy Grail that is already inside of us, then we will contribute to the confusion, the unhappiness, and the evil in the world. Because the evil in the world, the darkness in the world, will receive only in proportion to the lights, to the flames that are being lit. And we have one of those inside of us. It's right here. And therefore, if we attend to it, if we nourish it, if we give it enough fuel and air, then we have done what we came here to do. And so maybe one always has to have a little tentative note in these things, but maybe the confused and confusing, strange, bloodthirsty world in which we find ourselves these days, which is really much much more terrifying than it has been even a few years ago, and I don't terrify very easily. But that will reduce it. If everyone carries his own light, by having come close to it, by having nourished it, by having not permitted for it to be put out, then the darkness will recede. If we will not do that, if we cannot do that, then the likelihood is that the future is not a very fortuitous one. But we have within us that. We have within us that potential. We have within us that calling. Every human being is called to be a messenger of light, a savior, a liberator, a bodhisattva, whatever you want to call it. We all have that calling, but are we listening? Are we responding to it? And it's really something that we should never lose our hearing of. Underneath the noise, underneath the street noises, and underneath the howling of the coyotes or something like that, there is something else. And that something else will tell you light, light, light ineffable, light glorious, light transcendental, light, light, light to the world. You can hear it. You've been given the ears to hear it, but you have to listen. Like anything else. If that you want to hear the radio, you have to listen. If you don't listen, then you won't hear it. But we can listen and we can hear. Now it is true that we have a culture that has become, as the euphemism has it, secular. That is basically the opposite of spiritual, but that doesn't make any difference. What is important is that with us, inside of us, in our nature, in our consciousness, maybe I will even say in our brain, and I don't like the brain metaphor, but within us there is the solution to all that. And that is the discovery that we have a light already, and that more light shall be adduced to it, and that if that really happens, when we walk off the edge of this world into the beginning of the great column of glory, then we may remember, yes, we carry the light. We always had it. We have discovered it, and we are thankful for it. And we will carry it back to its source, where the light and ourselves have originated in themselves and originated in the eternal, where we have come from and where we are going, and where resides all true, abiding, and salvific meaning. I thank you very much. I hope that's a little spontaneous effusion of that effect. I made pages of notes and didn't use a single one, but I think this is the one that needed confirmation. And so, light, light, light to the world.